Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
Well, we made it to the 27th, and what is going on the TV right now, JC, that we didn't even think about?
Well, really doesn't matter, remember, but isn't there some kind of debate?
Well, you mean about buying shoes?
Yeah, because, Al Bundy was talking, he doesn't get enough money, and he's debating whether he should get a raise or no, or something else.
Well, Elvis Presley, back in 1956, on July 1st, 1956, he appeared on the Steve Allen Show. That was a TV show. Before he had his TV show, the Steve Allen Show was a radio show. It was quite a great show. If you think about it, if it was before Johnny Carson and Merv Griffith's show, the king of TV back in 56 was Steve Allen. A lot of people don't realize it. One of his guests he had on was Elvis Presley, singing his Blue Suede Shoe song.
Yeah, matter of fact, he had to be one of the first shows that he was on. And
well, his first show was right here on our stage, was Ed Sullivan's show.
A really big shoe.
Yeah, real big shoe. Well, anyway, his shoes are now going up for auction. They're size 10.5, and they were worn by Elvis Presley on the Steve Allen Show.
Hey, those are my size, and if those are blue, you should get those for me.
Well, if you wear them, you might get blue, too.
Yeah, blue suede, I bet, aren't they?
Yeah, the debate, I didn't even remember. Tonight was the night with the debate, wasn't it?
It is. Well, allegedly, yeah.
I don't know what type of debate it's going to be. Talking about diapers, maybe.
Some kind of debate. Somebody's debating. I guess somebody's going to be fishing somewhere and they are debating.
The weather here down in our community,
yeah,
down in Washington State, near Seattle, it is really bizarre. One day it's like 90. The next day it's 66. Next day it's raining. Then it's up in the 70s. It is really kind of strange for this time of the year. It's not stable.
Oh, yeah. When it's inconsistent like that, it's hard on the flora around there and your animals too, and probably you as well.
Yeah, Earth changes. That's what's going on. Well, the astronauts are kind of like stuck on the space station because their Boeing capsule developed a bunch of helium leaks. Now, besides helium leaks, now they're talking about maybe if they get that under control, which they don't think they will, but the parachutes might not pop out when it's supposed to come back and land.
Oh my! Could you imagine?
Why in the hell would they let it go up?
Yeah. Oh, well.
That's like, the space shuttle, right? They knew the one had exploded over Florida. They knew there was a problem with the seal. But yet they figured, oh, well, what's the odds are it exploding, right?
Yeah, right. You're just pretty much on top of a giant bomb with a lot of liquid fluid that's very ignitable. What could go wrong? Come on.
Well, it did. And those astronauts ended up in the bottom of the ocean, and they didn't even succumb from the blast. They figured they drowned.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So they actually blown up, came down, and ended up in the bottom of the ocean. What a way to die. But can you imagine, the space station isn't going to be around much longer. They're going to let it come down here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I guess it's time for it. Its time is running out, as they say. It's been, I don't know how long it's been up there, but it's been a while.
Don't forget, I think tomorrow there's an asteroid, 2 of them. I think one tomorrow and one this weekend is going to come between, a big one, by the way, between the moon and the Earth.
Yeah, and that is something. When it's that, I mean, people don't think that's much, but that is something. And listen, the ones that get even closer, maybe, the ones that are real close could take out a satellite someday. That would be horrible too.
They say you'll be able to see it. I don't know. Could you imagine? I was watching this movie the other night. Again, I can't sleep at night very well, so I end up staying and watching a lot of TVs. Could you imagine an asteroid huge? It's a planet killer. And by the way, it's one that's going by Friday. If it did slam in Earth, you wouldn't have to worry about getting up to go to do anything on Saturday, by the way. This won't be a Saturday left. But, I was watching this one movie, where this asteroid, they knew a week ahead of time.
Yeah.
It was going to hit the Earth. Could you imagine what people, the looting that started the people going crazy? 'Cause I don't care. But why bother looting and stealing TVs and running down the street with somebody's TV? What are you going to watch? There ain't going to be no TV left. You ain't going to be here.
No, there was another movie about that where they didn't tell the people. They knew for a year. They didn't tell nobody.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
It is scary, and that's why they didn't tell them. They didn't want panicking and the economy to shut down.
Well, who do we have? We got a couple of people on chat so far. Metatron Powered Light, Tom. I keep waiting for him to buy that sports car. Yeah. I think he would look cool in it,
Well, yeah. Plus, I see Barb's out there, too.
Yeah, Barb is out there. She's always out there. And then there's some people out there that are hid away. You know that.
They are. They're the, what do they call it, the quiet listeners.
Well, we are gaining big time on YouTube. Now, a lot of people who are watching us on YouTube, they are binge watching the past shows. But Thomas Jane, it's around 37,000 downloads when he was on.
37,000 plus and still climbing, yes.
Yeah, and that is really weird. We have gained like 43,000 people in 39 days on our channel.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's really taken off, which is fantastic. The people are in for a treat because they've got a lot of great shows with a lot of great subject matter for them to view and listen.
Oh, yeah. Well, who's our guest tonight? What are we going to be talking about?
Oh, our guest tonight is Keith McCluskey. Now, he is a longtime researcher and an author. And when I say researcher, he's boots on the ground, Gary. He has written a book about the Dyatlov Pass incident, and he didn't just write a book about it and research it. He actually went there. And if people don't realize how much of a journey it is to get to this place, and that's what we're going to talk about, the Dyatlov Pass incident.
And where's he located at?
He is from Ireland.
Ireland. Oh, yeah, that's going to be an interesting show. Let's bring him on. Hey, Keith, are you still there? And do you have your cup of tea?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Now, do you drink your tea straight? Because I'll be honest with you, my mother was Canadian. And,
right.
I grew up as a young kid not drinking milk very often. I was drinking tea all the time as a young kid.
Well, it must have done you good because for me, tea is the elixir of life.
She always used to call it tea.
Well, yeah, whatever. It tastes good.
Oh, it does. Well, have you been up to anything exciting this time of year compared to last year? Anything new going on? Any new books? Anything coming out?
Well, I've got a couple of plans in the pipeline. And I need time to do it, but I'm looking at the story of the 2 missing girls in Panama, the 2 Dutch girls that disappeared in 2013. The thing is, there's a lot of preparation to do for that, and I want to go and retrace the route they took their parts of their bodies were found eventually. But it's an interesting story. I don't know if you've come across it before.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, if you look up type in missing Dutch girls Panama. There's plenty on it. It's not as big as say Dyatlov, but there's a lot of interest in the story, and I'd like to cover that. I was going to go down there possibly early next year and retrace their route. I want to talk to the police there and the prosecutor, and then hopefully write a book about it when I get back. But say that's down the road a bit.
Well, the book you did write we had you on about a year ago, is this pass in Russia. What made you? That is a famous pass. I mean, a lot of people wrote books about it, but I don't think none of them as good as what you did. And I don't know many people that actually went and explored that trail and that pass like you did.
Yeah, it's there's a great deal of interest in it now. I mean, I only came across the story when I was doing military. I'm quite into Soviet military history, and one of the theory. There's dozens of theories about what happened to them, as you and your listeners and viewers will well know. But the military theory is the one that I'd followed, but that's how I came across it. That there may have been a rocket come down on them, or a parachute mine, or something of that nature, but caused by the military. And that was how I first came across it. But when I started looking into it, it was such a to me, it's the granddaddy of mysteries. It's so unusual. There's so many different theories, and every theory you come up with, there's something that contradicts it. Every theory that there is, you can't say, well, this answers all the questions, because nothing answers all the questions. That's why it's such an unusual mystery.
It really is, because again, my late friend had a couple people talk about it on his show about what happened. And, some people speculate, well, it could have been a Yeti that came in and tore the tents apart. Because if you really, whatever happened, they were sleeping, and they were in various, dress. Some of them were not even totally dressed, and whatever happened to them, it happened really fast, didn't it? And it scared the what out of them.
That's the key. That's the absolute key to the story. That whatever happened really fast, as you correctly say, and it terrified them, because for them to escape from the tent the way they did, they were scared witless, and they were running basically to their deaths. Because some of them were running in socks, and without proper winter clothing. They'd left their jackets behind. They literally just ran, tore the tent, slashed the tent to get out of it, and ran. So whatever it was must have really, really scared them. That's the key. That's what I always say, is if you can answer what happened, what scared them, I think you've got the answer to the whole mystery. But what would cause 9 people to run for their lives? Well, that's it.
Yeah, unless there were soldiers that came in or did something, or a Yeti. I don't think a missile going off would cause them to run out like that in various states.
No. And even soldiers turning up, the local tribe, the Mansi, that's another theory. But if somebody came up to the tent and said, look, we've got guns, or, you lot in there, get out, would it terrify you? You'd think, well, what the hell's going on here? You'd be confused, and you'd maybe try and reason with people, or say, what the hell are you doing? We're just hikers, or whatever. But if it was something like a Yeti, or some kind of animal that you'd never seen before, well, that would make me run.
Hell, it'd make me run if it was my ex-wife, too. I'll tell you that. Now, before we get into, all that happened, or speculate what happened to him, you actually walked that trail, didn't you? And how long a trail was that?
Well, yeah, it's. I retraced. There was a large group of us. We started off at the Dyatlov Foundation in Yekaterinburg, and we took the train up to Ivdel, and basically that was the route they took. They stopped off part way in a town called Serov, and we stopped there. I actually wanted to get off in Serov and go to the school that they went to, but it was an overnight train, and I'm afraid I need my sleep. Because we were there for quite a few hours, the train stopped, and then we went on up to Ivdel, which was their final. So we got off at the same station, and we had one of the these big old Russian Kamaz trucks, which had been fitted with very, very rough seating. We took one of those to at least save us having to walk too far. That took us quite a bit of the way, but there was still a good 30 odd miles to hike after that. And I did it in the summer as opposed to the winter. But the thing is, everybody thinks that, not doing a journey like that in the winter is a piece of cake because it's the summer. But it rains like nowhere I've ever been in the Urals, and it's a sea of mud, basically. These four-wheel drive vehicles get stuck in it, and you're in the middle of the forests. It was hard going, and what they did was they gave me a ski pole, which I didn't see any need for that because it's in the summer. So why would you need a ski pole? But I thought it'd be a good camera prop, standing at Dyatlov Pass with a ski pole. But it was a lifesaver because there was areas of mud where you were trying to lean across. There was a fairly thick vegetation, so you're trying to make your way along, and then you come to literally mud that you'll sink into up to your waist if you step in it. And you use the ski pole to try and go around the edge, but because you're leaning away from the vegetation, you're using the ski pole to try and keep you upright. It was quite interesting.
Well, Keith, yeah. You said you could get up to your waist. Did anybody get stuck that far into the mud?
Well, I got stuck, and we had two guides. There was Yury Kuntsevich, who did run. Sadly, he's passed away now, but he ran the Dyatlov Foundation. Well, there was two guides. One of them goes up there twice, 3 times a year, and I'd sort of fallen behind a bit, and he was very good because he kept an eye on me, even though I'd trained for the hike. It was pretty heavy going, and I had 60 odd pounds on my back as well, in a backpack. But my foot went into one of these mud pools, I suppose you could call them, and it just went down and down and down. So I was lying on the side trying to get my foot out with great difficulty, and he came back and literally had to pull my foot out, and then we had to pull the boot out, and that's just with one foot going in it. So if you were on your own, I dread to think what would happen if you ended up with both feet in one of them. It was hard work.
Well, it sounds very dangerous too. So if people didn't do it in a group of people with somebody, guiding you, you could get killed very easy.
I'll tell you just very quickly an anecdote about that really odd thing. I wouldn't go up there on my own. I was contacted once through my website by a guy who lived in Germany, and he said to me, "I'm going to go up there. I'm going to hike from Yekaterinburg, and I want to go up." And he said, "Have you got any tips for me?" And I said, "Well, who are you going with?" He said, "Well, no." He said, "I've got maps and all the rest of it." And I said to him, "And you're going to hitchhike from Yekaterinburg. And I said, well, you're a foreigner. That's going to attract attention for a start. And, the idea is that most foreigners got plenty of money and they can afford to, pay for the train to get up there, or a private hire or whatever. But he was going to hire, and I said, you pass very close to 2 military areas, and apparently anybody caught within one of those military areas or near to it, because they're not marked off. One of them is a place where they process nuclear warheads, and that. Yeah, and I said, well, if you get caught in there, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do. And I said, you can pass by it, and you'll be probably arrested. Well, surely they're not going to arrest me. But he was so naive. And I said, if you get into trouble, and I actually told him about the mod, but I said, if you get into trouble on the way up to the pass on your own, and I said, there's plenty of bears up there, whatever. I said, you've got nobody to help. What's anyway, he contacted me a little while later and said that his parents were really glad that he decided not to go, because I think he probably would have just disappeared. It's funny how people view the world, though. You look at a map and you think, well, I'll just go from there to there. But when you're on the ground, it's pretty different, as I'm sure you well know.
Yeah, but Keith, think about it. The bears there are not the friendly type of bears. They look at a human being as a dinner.
Yeah. When we camped where the Dyatlov party had camped at the base of the mountain of Kolatsiakl, you would have to go out of the camp to go and do your, in inverted commas, business. So I remember this couple came back and somebody said to me, do not go north of the camp. There's a big bear up there, and it's very close to us. He said, go to the south of the camp. And he said, here's Sasha, who saw the bear, and he reckoned that this bear, and I know there's big grizzlies in Alaska, but apparently this bear was over 6 foot at its front shoulder, standing on all fours. So that's a bear that the shoulder is slightly higher than I am. So you can imagine on its hind legs, it's probably twice your height. So it would make a meal of you in no time. I find them quite frightening animals, to be honest.
Well, yeah. And, how about rumors of Yeti up there?
Well, a lot of people discount the Yeti theory. I don't discount any theory. I think you've got to keep an open mind on this. To me, like the Yeti, it could be a relative of the bear, or a kind of a wolf-like creature. It's a huge, vast area, the north of Russia, and even if you think where we were was partly populated, but Ivdel, which was there was a settlement at Ushma, which was about 30 miles away, but Ivdel's 80 miles away, and that's the nearest small town. It's vast, the whole area, and nobody knows what's there. To people to say, there's no such thing. You can't say that, because although they say bring proof, but there's enough sightings of these types of creatures to give some credibility to it, if you like. And if you ran into a creature that you didn't know, you'd never seen before, but it's terrifying. So I can understand when people say bring in the Yeti theory, that's something that would have terrified them, and they'd want to get away as fast as they could.
But I'm gonna say this. Back in the early 2000s, a friend of mine who was a medical doctor, my other passion besides talking is taking photos. So we went up to Canada. We went up to the Canadian Rockies, and we were out there taking pictures of old silver mines, old buildings, cemeteries, and stuff like that. And somebody told us about this Japanese internment camp way up in the Canadian Rockies. So nobody around. So we figured out where it was at. We went to the place, and we hiked in from some forest road. We had to hike in 2.5 miles to get to it. And it was built around a base of a mountain with a creek going by, or creek, whatever you want to call it. And my friend, we had our cameras, and he looked at me and he said, you got the telephoto on your camera. Get a picture of that bear across. So I swung around, to get a picture of this, what I thought was a bear.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I believe in Bigfoot after that experience, because whatever it was, it looked at me, it screamed, it ran across the creek on 2 to 4 legs and chased us all the way back to where the car was. And I can tell you, the stench was so strong, the smell of it, it was horrible. But then it was off the tree line, maybe 25 feet or so away from the car. And it bent a tree over like nothing, like a 4-inch tree, just like bent it over. And then it threw a rock and took out the fender, passenger fender, part of the door. And I can tell you what I saw. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't, whatever it was something I'd never seen before. So I believe really strongly Yeti does exist.
Yeah, I don't discount the theory at all. I keep an open mind on all the theories. See, this is the trouble when you get somebody who comes on and who's very strong for one particular theory. They bend everything to fit it, and they won't listen to anybody else. You know, they'll say, "Well, that's rubbish. You know, mine's the only one." But I keep an open mind on everything, and I think if this mystery was ever to be solved, that's the only way you can do it. You know, people say, "Well, that's nonsense." It's like the whole business about aliens. You know, I can't believe in outer space that there isn't somebody out there or something out there that's at least as intelligent as we are. But to discount it and say, "Oh, it's just rubbish," you know, there's a lot of evidence that sort of leans towards it, that there is, you know, we do get visits from aliens or you know, strange spacecraft. There's just too many sightings of it happening.
Well, people are naive, Keith. You know, a lot of people just think we're the only intelligent life, period. And you know what? The planets and solar systems and galaxies continue on. They just don't stop. We need to take a break, Keith. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and then we're going to get into when you were getting up to where they're at. What was it like? And you can describe that, and then we can talk about what actually transpired with these people. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be back with Keith.
Okay.
And we'll be back right after this. So don't go anywhere.
Desert hills and lonely places, heavy still without your traces, holding on to every breath we wasted, tender voice, soft embrace. Under the darkest sky and for you, don't wanna see the night fade to blue. Under the dark sky and for you, don't wanna see it red fade to blue. I wanna flow with you over holy water. I wanna crawl into all your secret corners. I wanna brace myself. We go heavy harder. We go heavy harder. Heavy. I wanna lose myself in you. I wanna lose myself in you. Before you fade to blue. Still looking in all the same places. Still running in circles like wasted.
Now, the latest news from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network Newsroom. I'm Guy Ticker. We need to report UAPs without fear. Have you seen a UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, or the more popular phrase, a UFO? Did you tell anybody or stay silent for fear of ridicule or harassment? One of the top advocates in Congress for learning more about what people have seen wants to make sure the government takes those reports more seriously than it has. Wisconsin Republican Congressman Glenn Grothman said, quote, "Isn't it important that the Department of Defense look into this and see exactly if there's any possible explanation?" Close quote. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com. Come along on a unique journey of adventure and discovery. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot, a first-hand account from paranormal researcher and skilled outdoorsman Mike Dupler on his many years of investigations into the Bigfoot phenomena and his personal encounters with these enigmatic creatures of the forest, complete with photographs. Don't delay. Order your copy today. This book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. Coming to you from some far point station, like a cosmic tumbleweed, both north and south of the Pleiades. Here's your host, Gary Anderson.
Well, Keith, we are back, and you're getting all the way up to where they camped out. Can you describe what the scenery was like and what the layout was like?
It's basically it's what they call the taiga up there. It's that's Taiga, but it's heavily forested, fairly thick vegetation. But the area where they camped on the last night before they went up the mountain was where we were, and they, as I say, we slept in a tent that Yury Kuntsevich had made, which took almost a similar number of people. We were sleeping in the similar size tent to what they have, so just to get the full experience of it, as it were. And it was peculiar because you kept thinking, or I kept thinking back, that this is where they were. I know it's 50 or plus years later and a different time, but it was that feeling that we were standing in the same place that they had stood. And I don't think, the vegetation's changed a bit, the trees have grown a bit taller and all the rest of it. It was basically the same place. But you feel there's a constant feeling, especially at night time, where we made a big campfire and put logs around to sit on, but there's a constant feeling that the whole forest is sort of hemming you in. You're surrounded by it, and it's deadly silent. I grew up in Africa partly, and in Africa you get all sorts of noises at night when you're near a forest, or virtually anywhere you get the noise of crickets and what have you. But there was just nothing. It was just total silence. It was quite eerie, actually.
And that would be, void of sound or anything like that. Did you feel like anything was like staring out at you guys?
Well, I put it this way: I wouldn't have wanted to be there on my own. I was glad I was with plenty of company. It was a strange place. It took us 2 days to get there, and we'd camped at the halfway mark while we were here, hiking on the way there to that particular spot. But we stopped about halfway and camped there for the night, and I didn't have that. I mean, I'm not just saying this because it was where they were, but I didn't get that same spooky feeling. We were in another area, not quite so heavily forested, but still a lot of vegetation around. But sitting there at night time, I didn't get the same feeling. But like I say, I wouldn't like to have been there on my own or just with somebody else. It was a very, very weird feeling.
That sounds like it. And then when you camped there the first night, how about the second night? Where did you camp at?
Well, no, we stayed there. That was our base while we were there, and we would make our forays up onto the mountain, up to Boot Rock. I always call it the Memorial Rock, but it's Boot Rock is the shape of a boot that you see in a lot of photos with Dyatlov, the Dyatlov story. But we were up there, and we would go down into where the bodies were found. But first day we went up to where the tent was located, and get a sense of where the tent was in relation to the ridge behind us and the mountain itself. Because as you know, one of the main theories that everybody tries to push, including the Russians, the government, is the avalanche theory, which we'll get onto that in a minute. But I wanted to get a sense of where the tent was in relation to the top of the ridge and the mountain, and then we went down from there to the tree line to see where the bodies were found, and the cedar tree. So just to get a feel for the whole area.
How far were the bodies spread apart from each other?
Well, so one thing that doesn't come out in all the stories is where the first two bodies were found by the cedar tree, and where the snow shelter was built. They are so close to each other, you could almost. I was standing there, and I remember saying to Yury, is this definitely the site? And the rock that Luda's body was found, Luda Dubonina, the rock that her body was found on in the stream, you can actually see it there. It's definitely the same rock, and yet the cedar tree is just up. It's not a particularly deep depression there, like a cutting where the stream runs. But you could talk to somebody from where Luda's body was found up at the cedar tree. You'd have to raise your voice a bit, but they were very close together. The other three, Igor Dyatlov and Rustem Slobodin and Zina, their bodies were found in a line several hundred yards away, going back up in a line towards back up to the tent. And that's where they died. And they're almost equidistant apart, a few hundred yards between each one.
Now, was there an avalanche? Was there an avalanche there at that time?
Everybody, it's easy to say there's an avalanche, and people have come out with lots of, we've done these tests and all the rest of it. When you stand there and you look up at the ridge and see how slight the slope is, it's just into the range, 17%, if you like, 15-17% of an angle where an avalanche could start, but it's literally right on the envelope of where it's not that steep. And the other thing about it, and it's been pointed out by a number of people who've looked at this avalanche theory, the winds up there are really, really strong. So what happens is, you've got the wind, and the winds are coming from the west. So the tent is over the ridge on the eastern side. So what happens is the wind blows from the west very, very strongly, and it takes the snow away from the top of the ridge. It creates a kind of a vortice, if you like, because it's blowing so strongly, so that the snow doesn't settle there. So there's even less snow build-up than you would expect. It's not like it's on the side of the actual mountain itself. It's not. The tent is out on the ridge, and this wind is blowing over the top of the ridge and taking a lot of the snow away from the top of the ridge and further down towards where the tent was. So there's even less snow build-up there.
That's interesting too. I mean, but here you have all these people, and how many tents were there?
No, there was just the one tent that they all slept in.
So they again, whatever when they found their the bodies, wasn't there supposedly like a look of horror on their face?
Well, they were the eyes were missing of some of them, and you know they were in a kind of a grimace. Some people say, well, it could be the way they've frozen to death, but it's the three. The thing is the way they all died. The three that were in a line trying to get back up, basically froze to death on the way back up. But among the bodies that were found, the two of the bodies that were found in the snow shelter had chests that had been caved in, and blood in their lungs as well. You know, they'd suffered terrible injuries. One had a fractured skull, and they'd suffered quite significant injuries, which people say, oh, it's you know, it's the snow above them that fell down and crushed them. Okay, maybe not, but very peculiar injuries to have. And the other thing is they suffered the injury. Those worst injuries were suffered down at the snow shelter, because most medical people who've looked at it have said that anybody with a crushed chest would not have been able to walk, you know, from where run from where the tent was down to the bottom of the tree line. They just wouldn't have been physically capable of doing it.
I wonder if they were attacked by something.
Well, that's what I wonder. I do wonder strongly about it, because the injury to one of them, who had the skull fracture, it was partly behind his ear, and you think, well, that's like a blow, you know, to the skull to fracture it. So you think it's more like he's been hit rather than, you know, if snow fell on you and fell on your head, quite a lot of it, you'd expect the whole of your head to cave in, or the whole of the skull to suffer some, you know, fragmentation. But this was more like a deliberate kind of blow to a particular area. Very, very strange injuries to them.
Well, to think they were in their tent, and then, you know, here it was freezing out, and was it? Do you know if it was snowing at the time? Did they have any idea?
It was. There was very bad weather that night. There was a very strong wind blowing, and it was the temperature. The other thing is, with the wind, the temperature would have been down to. The estimates are between minus 25 degrees to minus 40 degrees. It would have been absolutely freezing. I don't know the last batch. For anybody listening, I would say next time there's a spot of cold weather, try going out when it's well below freezing in a pair of socks and see how long you can stand there for.
Not very long.
No jacket.
Yeah, weren't some of them like half dressed too?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that's the thing. This is the crux of the whole mystery. What made them run away from the tent and run so far? You know, to go so far away from the tent, because even if there'd been an avalanche, when they found the tent, there was all right. The tent had collapsed, but there wasn't covered in thick, heavy snow. So even if it had been a small partial avalanche, you could have run away from it and then thought, well, I'm going to die out here. I need to try and get back. You know, you would at least stop. I would anyway, and stop and turn around and then look back and see if maybe if the avalanche was continuing, or whether you should go back and try and get something to protect your body. Because you were going, you know, it's certain death is what they were facing.
Yeah, and you know what? It would be a matter of minutes to freeze to death at that temperature.
They tried. They got down to the bottom. I mean, when I was there, I walked it and I timed it, and it took me 20 minutes to get from the tent down to the tree line, and the tree line has moved by about 600 feet because it's encroaching up the mountain. So that area where you as you come to, it's not solid trees that you come to vegetation and young trees growing up, young bushes, and then it gets thicker as you go in. But that's come up since 1959, since the disaster. It's come up the mountain by about 600 feet. So they had a bit further to go on that night in February 1959. So they managed to get down to the bottom and tried to light a fire without much success. They got a fire going, but they suffered burns trying to keep warm, by literally putting their hands and feet in the fire to warm them up.
But another thing a lot of people realize in those type of temperatures, that your brain malfunctions and it thinks you're hot. So the first thing that people will do if they're out in those type of temperatures, their brain is telling them they're hot. So they're shedding their clothes. Could that be also what was going on with them? They were shedding their clothes?
Well, a lot of people have said that. They call it paradoxical undressing, is the term for it. And there must have been... there were young, fit people, bearing in mind, apart from Zolotaryev, who was in his late 30s, but he was a fit man. And, the rest of them were all in very good shape physically, but it doesn't matter how good shape you're in, you'll last a bit longer than the average Joe, if you like, who's probably nowhere near as fit as they were, and not able to withstand the temperatures. But they could only do it for a little while before they started succumbing to the temperatures. I've tried it. I've tried going out when it's been really cold. I've done it in minus 12, and it's absolutely bitter. And I think, well, they're in minus 25, minus 30. Some people have said even minus 40 with the wind chill. You wouldn't be able to stand that for any length of time at all.
You'd actually freeze as you're moving. That's the scary
part. What
part.
it's like. Yeah.
So your body functions would not be functioning very long. So
it's like you say, though, your brain doesn't work properly when it gets like that. Your thinking becomes confused, and it's like your mind is fighting what's happening to your body and wondering what the hell you can do to correct it, if you like. The three that tried to get back up to the tent obviously had some reasonable thought processes going, like, we've got to get back to the tent basically to survive, but they didn't make it, so they were going downhill, or pardon the expression, physically going downhill all the time.
Yeah,
dying.
And I don't even know how they could even survive as long as they did to get down there and to create a fire. And, even that would have been a miracle. But here, again, how long were they dead before they were discovered?
Well, excuse me, the first bodies weren't found. They'd been up there for... the final bodies weren't found for a couple of months, but they've been up there for weeks. But the thing is, in the snow, the cold will preserve your body to a certain extent. It's like you're almost mummified, but you shrivel up. And just very recently, to give you an example, they pulled what looked like a wolf out of the tundra they had thawed in Siberia, and the wolf was God knows how many 1,000 years old or something like that. So the cold will preserve the body for a certain, for quite a while, until it starts to thaw.
Yeah, what did the military or what did the authorities say about this? What was their conclusion? How did they
Well, this, when people say to me, "What do you think happened?" I can't make my theory work. I'll be totally honest with you, because one of my interests is military, and you think, well, if it was a rocket, well, where's the evidence for the rocket? Or if it was a training exercise of some kind, surely there'd be, some kind of evidence of, well, I don't know, whether, military tracks or whatever, but there's no evidence of that. But it's the reaction of the authorities to the whole thing. Why would they try and close the reaction of the authorities seems to be, we want to shut this down. We don't want anybody talking about it. After the bodies were discovered, the place was closed off for 4 years. Yeah. When I say closed off, they didn't put barriers around it. The Soviet Union was a different place to, say, USA or the UK. If you want to get on a train to Washington, you'll go and buy yourself a ticket. In 1959, if you wanted to go up to the Dyatlov Pass from Yekaterinburg, or Sverdlovsk as it was then, you couldn't just go to the station and buy a ticket. You had to get a permit to go there. So what they did was they just stopped issuing permits, which had the same effect of closing the place off. And if anybody was found up there who shouldn't have been there, they'd have said, well, where's your permit? Why are you here? And as I say, there's a nuclear warhead area just to the south. I say just to the south, it's a good bit south, but there's a lot of military activity in the whole area anyway, and there was then. So, but I just don't understand the authorities didn't seem to want to get to the bottom of it.
Well, maybe because they knew what happened and then they don't want to disclose it.
I think they do. I think they do, and nobody's talking, as they say. But one thing, Yurikov arrived from Moscow, from the federal, the public prosecutor's office, arrived and took all the files back to Moscow. And I mean, I can tell you, I've actually got this part of the book, if you just bear with me a second. In an interview, Yevgeny Okishev was the number 2 investigator on it. He was the lead investigator was Lev Ivanov, and his boss was Yevgeny Okishev, and he was interviewed by Leonid Proshkin, and I'll tell you a bit more about him in a minute. But in an interview, I'll just read this quick bit to you. Proshkin said to him, to Okishev, "Tell me, in your days as an investigator, can you name any other criminal cases taken for investigation from the Sverdlovsk Oblast to the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office, or even that of the USSR?" And Okishev replied, "No, nothing of the kind. In my long practice, the Dyatlov case was the only one ever taken to Moscow. We can only guess how much importance was attached to it." And he was the number 2 cop, if you like, on the Dyatlov case.
Yeah, it sounds like they were trying to whitewash it and hide it.
Hide it, basically. Yeah, in the Soviet Union of those days, you didn't need to whitewash anything. You just hid it. I mean, even the Moscow phone directory was a state secret.
Yeah, well, again, I just keep thinking of those people, to tear them, cut themselves out of the tent versus going out the door of the tent, the opening of the tent. Well,
yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's a quick exit, because those 10, it was a tent that had been doubled in size, more or less. It was 2 tents almost joined together. Igor Dyatlov had stitched them together to get everybody in, 9 people. And the front of it was buttons. It wasn't a zip. A zip you can open quite quickly. But there was an inner lining in the tent for, just to try and keep the heat in as well. So there was a bit more to get out of it. But the quick way is you just get a knife and you slash your way out of it, which is exactly what they did. But there's, like I keep repeating myself, there's the key to the story. If you can, if there was one, if somebody, a lady appeared to me now from the lamp and said, "I'll give you 3 wishes," that'd be the first one. Put me there that night and let me see what happened what made them do that.
Well, whatever, they had to have been so terrified that they knew what would happen if they ran out there ill prepared.
Yeah.
They knew that they could very well die, which they did, but they chose to get out of that tent. So whatever happened, it must have happened really fast. And again,
to not just get out of the tent, but get away from the tent. To get away from safety, really. Like I say, the avalanche doesn't work for me, and it's got to be something else. I mean, the one of the Dyatlov researchers, and it was something that really caught my eye. A guy he's German, Henning Kuersten. He came out with a book called The Dyatlov Pass Mystery, Not a Cold Case. Now, his theory, I wrote the forward for that book, but I liked it. His theory, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, but was ball lightning was what caused some of the injuries and caused them to run away from it. Because if you've ever seen ball lightning, I've looked at a fair bit of it up on YouTube. It's actually quite frightening. Quite, a ball of shimmering ball of electricity. You wouldn't even know what the hell it was. But if anybody's listening, I'd recommend them to have a look at that theory and see what they think of it, because it does answer some of the questions. Because if you see something like that and it comes very close to you, it's frightening, and you want to get as far away as you can from it, especially because it keeps going. It's not static. It's moving around. So, and going back to your Yeti theory as well, if nobody's ever seen one, close up, and live to tell the tale, if something confronted them like that, you'd want to get as far away as you could from it. It's whatever it was life-threatening. That's the key to it.
Well, I keep thinking about the 2 guys, or the 2 people that their rib cages and their lungs were, crushed.
Yeah,
because if your rib cage, you're going to bleed to death with your lungs. You're not going to live very long after that happens. They reckon 30 minutes. Yeah,
30 minutes is all you'll survive with something like that. But I mean, I've had bruised ribs, and my God, it's painful as hell. But to have your ribs actually crushed, and the strange thing is that the crushing was a straight line. They weren't sort of haphazard. It's almost like they'd been hit by a car, or it was on both of them. Both Zolotariev and Luda, the female, they both had exactly the same kind of crushed. The actual injury itself was very similar, and it was almost as if they'd been hit by something very hard, like a long piece of metal or something.
Yeah,
a very strange injury.
Yeah, and again, too, if it would have been from, let's say, the avalanche, that wouldn't have done that. If they would have fell on a rock, it wouldn't have done it that way, because it would have been multiple, damage, not exactly. Just what you're talking about.
Yeah, you've got it in one. An avalanche wouldn't do that, and neither would a rock. It's more. Somebody says it's similar to a car crash, although obviously being hit by a car causes other injuries. But the fact it's so localized to both of them, it's almost as they're like targeted injuries. That's the really weird thing about it. And of course, the other thing is they tested the clothes for radiation as well, which is not the sort of thing you'd expect if somebody's died of, what would they call it? Misadventure, is what they call it over here. I don't know what they call it in the US. But, somebody dies in odd circumstances in Yellowstone National Park, and then they can't quite tie it down, and they don't suspect foul play. You say misadventure. But in a case of misadventure, would you test people's clothes for radiation?
Well, you mentioned that there was a nuclear facility there.
Yeah.
Not far.
Yeah.
How many miles from there?
Oh, it's actually, in fairness, it's a good bit south. It's south of Ivdel, which is the last station they went to. It's not directly local, but who knows what else is going on out with that. It's a very large. It's a closed city. Well, it still is a closed city there that where all the workers live, and the whole area. It's not fenced off. But if you can look at it on Google Earth, it's got areas where the nuclear warheads are stored and reprocessed. But it's a giant area, and it is to the south. But who knows if they're doing anything outside that area? You know, that's the thing about it. And how does radiation spread? You know, if on the wind. Could be something to do with that, and maybe that's why they were keen to. But then radiation spreading in the wind, okay, it might go on your clothes, but that wouldn't cause a crushing injury to your chest.
No, it wouldn't. And let's be honest with you. If it was the Russian troops or Russian security back then, they would have just shot him. So they would be bullet holes and not crushed ribs and all that. That part is the strange part on this. Has anybody, because everybody's talking about UFOs, UAPs, aliens, and all that stuff. Has anybody looked at it? Maybe it was off-world creatures that could have done this.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing about the whole Dyatlov story is there was something going on in the night sky that night. There's too many witnesses to disprove that, but there was lights in the sky that night, and if I in my second book on the Dyatlov story, I've shown a number of the pictures that they took of what they thought was in the sky. They're peculiar bright objects, but loads of people in the area, the local tribesmen, even people as far away as Ivdel, had seen lights in the sky, and not just that the night they died, but constantly over a period of time, people were seeing lights. So people say, well, maybe this is something to do with possibly alien activity or something unexplained that could have killed them, connected to the lights. There's definitely something in it, because like I say, it can't be denied. There was something happening in the sky that night, even if you can't connect the two. But it suggests there might be a link there.
Yeah, too bad. I don't know if they preserved any of the tissues. Back in '59, they probably didn't think about it. But they've gone back and maybe checked DNA and all that on, any of the victims. But if you really think about this, something so sinister happened, and at a fast pace for them to tear out of the tent, to try to go down to the base of the trail, it knowing that they're going to die. Something, whatever it was, military or maybe a bear out of hibernate. A lot of people think that bears hibernate and they don't go out in the cold. They actually do. And maybe they were visited by a very hungry grizzly. I don't know. Something happened.
Well, it comes back to tracks again. But you see, another theory is the Mansi tribe. They're the local tribe. They had a lot of reasons to be not great friends of the Russians, because the Russians viewed a lot of the indigenous tribes as people to be educated, because they're putting it uncharitably, they were savages to be brought into the Soviet, the communist system. But the Mansi worshipped the natural world, the sun, the sky, and or the rivers. They believed that the rivers there contained water spirits. They had strict rules for how they dealt with those things. And here you have the communists coming in and tramping over everything, cutting down trees and digging, looking for oil. So they had plenty of reasons to be fed up with, Russians passing through and Russian hikers. But again, it's even if some of the Mansi had got a couple of guns and gone up there and said, right, you lot out of the tent and you can go down to the bottom, and if you come back up here, we'll shoot you and kill you. But you still wouldn't slash your way out of the tent, would you? I don't think, anyway.
No, I would think that if they came up there, they would allow them out or talk to. I don't know. This is something I don't think we're ever going to really have the answer on it.
Well, no. As each year passes, people who have memories of that time, they're passing away now. So the living memory aspect of it is going. And I remember another thing I'd mention about memory. Even people who were in the search party there at the time in 1959. Just to give you a quick example, the 2013 Dyatlov conference, which there used to be a yearly conference held at the university that they set out from every year. There was an argument between two of the original search party members about the appearance of the tent when it was first found. They were both arguing about what it looked like, with both of them disagreeing with each other, and whether anything had been moved out of the tent. And that's two of the people who were there at the time. So everybody's, all the people who were there who remember, your memory fades, and they're going now. So anybody who has actual knowledge of what might have happened, they're not going to be around much longer.
No, they're not. We got a caller. Caller, go ahead and ask Keith a question.
Keith, my question to you, this is Tom, is...
Hi, Tom.
How many researchers have actually contacted the Mansi people who, because they're indigenous and because they have such a strong bond with the area, they probably are more aware of cryptid activity and things of that nature? How many people have actually gone to the lengths of talking to them at length to try to ascertain exactly what happened? Because that would probably be, with their connection with the land and the connection with the area, one of the first places I would go if I was an investigator.
Absolutely, 100%. And the thing is that a few people have, I say a few. There's been you'll see on YouTube. There's a few people have spoken to the Mansi, but it's along the lines of they pitch up with their camera and they say, "Tell us about what the Yeti here, the Menk they call it, the Mansi call it." But nobody's ever spent time with them, and that's one thing actually I wanted to do, was to go up there and if you could actually live with them for a while and get to know them and see what they thought. We passed through a Mansi settlement, Ushma, when I went up last, and they tend to be very reserved people. They'll give interviews and they'll talk, but nobody's ever really sat down and got to know them. It's very much here's another team passing through from BBC London or CNN or whatever, and they'll just give stock answers to everything. But I think you've really hit it with that, because I think if somebody was to spend a bit of time, get to know them and really get to know them and how they felt about that time, especially amongst the older ones, I think you might get somewhere.
Well, hey, Tom, Tom, you being in law enforcement in the past, for a situation like this, I've been people in the tent and below freezing by 30, 40 degrees, and to slice their way out of the tent and take off running. Don't you think it would have to be something so scary and life-threatening they would risk it knowing that they're going to die anyway?
I would think so. I mean, to cut your way out from the inside of the tent, especially, you know, dressed as lightly as some of them were, it tells me that something came in probably very fast and just surprised everybody. But it was so much of a heinous experience that they got out of there as quickly as they could. The fact that you had people that supposedly their eyes were missing, their tongues were missing. You had two individuals that had their chest literally caved in. Tells me that whatever it was, be it a bear or a Sasquatch or whatever it was, came in very rapidly, and you know, they were in a surprise panic when it happened.
Yeah, Keith, that's again, that's you know, that's the thought I have in my mind too. Tom, thank you for calling in. Okay.
Yeah.
You bet. You have a good night.
Yep.
You too.
Yeah. Same to you, Tom. All the best.
Yeah. Well, whatever happened, if you ever figure that out, I would really like to know, because I have studied that, and whatever, like I said, whatever happened, it happened like in a matter of seconds, where they, you know, they took off. I mean, without their shoes on, and in some cases running through it or trying to get through it. Again, whatever happened, we'll never know. But maybe someday we might know. Maybe somebody will step forward. I don't know. But it's one of these things that it goes on in life that you really would like an answer to, because it's like a puzzle you can't find all the pieces to.
Well, I without sounding melodramatic, I did have one angle, but I was advised not to pursue it.
What was that angle?
Well, I literally cannot repeat it here. What I might do is I'll let you know later. I can't repeat it on air. There was one angle I was going to try and go after, and I was told it would not be in my best interest to do it. So, but I'll mention it to you later. But I don't want it broadcast.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, hey Keith, do you have a website and anything you want to share?
I do actually. Yeah. I'll what I was going to say, I've got two websites, and I also have, I've written a couple of books on it. The most recent one, as I say, was Henning Kuersten's one. I wrote the foreword for that, the Dyatlov Pass Mystery, not a cold case. Worth a read. I've written Journey to Dyatlov Pass, and my first one was Mountain of the Dead. And they're all on my website, and if anybody'd like to have a look, buy the book and have a read and see what you think. And what you'll find in my book is that I keep an open mind. I don't say this is what happened. What I think happens with some authors is they tend to say this is what happened and I'm right. I don't say that. I say these are all the theories. You make your mind up.
Yeah. And again, why don't you give the website? Go ahead and give them the link.
I don't. What I'll do is I'll email it to the quite a convoluted. It's Dyatlov Pass Incident, www.dyatlovpassincident.com. If you type that in and Keith McCluskey, it'll bring it up. But it's got all the pictures. It's worth looking at from the point of view if you want to get a good idea of what it's like up there. It's got loads of pictures of the journey up to the pass, the mountain itself, where the bodies were found, and other various theories as well.
And again, you can go to our website and just click on to it, and there's a link. It'll take you right to his website. Well, Keith, I want to thank you coming back on again. It's a thought, a puzzle that I wish we could actually figure out. But again, maybe we will never know. But something that night drastically happened. Hey, Keith, I want you to have a great weekend, and I want to thank you for coming on. What time is it there right now where you're at?
It is coming up to 3:15 in the morning.
Well, now you can get back to sleep, but maybe that tea might keep you awake. You know that.
It is actually.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always glad that you give me an excuse to have more tea. Thank you.
Okay, Keith, you take care.
Yeah. All the best. Thank
Okay,
you for
my
having
friend.
me, Gary.
Uh-huh. You take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, we got a great show tomorrow with two great guests. We're going to be talking about, well, abductions and all that, not by, well, whatever. We're talking about the ones from up there, ETs. And then our second guest, you remember the TV show, Facts of Life. We have one of the stars of Facts of Life on tomorrow as our second guest. And again, I want to thank everybody because we have grown so much, so fast on YouTube. And we're hitting between 500,000 and 1 million solidly on all the apps. And it's because you, and I had this pointed out to me last week. What about the truckers? I forgot about you guys. And I didn't forget about you. I just didn't think about it. I just like you're there. And I want to thank all the truckers that listen to the show because let's face it, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be on the air. You made the show from right at the get-go, at the start. So again, a big shout out to all the truckers. Again, I want to thank all the people on chat and Tom with those really great questions asking the guests. Well, till tomorrow, everybody have a good one. Stay out of trouble. We'll catch you, well, on the other side of wherever tomorrow.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there.